Welcome back to Inside the System. I'm Jasmine Logan, and I'm joined by Emeritus Political Science Professor Dr. David Canervo. Today we'll be covering the latest news in American politics relating to the new president's policies, how taxes on imports could affect consumers, and what is going to happen to USAID. So stay tuned. Since our last chat, a lot has happened in the world of U.S. politics. President Donald Trump began his second term, and during his first week back in office, he signed 36 executive orders. Some of these policies would make changes to our health care, foreign affairs, and federal government. And Democrats had previously sounded the alarm on the campaign trail about Project 2025, warning that a second Trump term would bring changes from immigration crackdown to dismantling DEI. CNN's Tom Foreman examines how those warnings are playing out.
Reforming or doing away with the Federal Disaster Relief Agency, FEMA, dismantling diversity programs, rolling back environmental restrictions, accepting only two genders, replacing nonpartisan federal workers with administration loyalists, and aggressively pursuing undocumented immigrants. All of those ideas are being pushed by President Donald Trump.
We're getting rid of all of the cancer. I call it cancer, the cancer caused by the Biden administration.
And a CNN analysis has found many of Trump's plans reflect deep ties to Project 2025, the 900-page plan of action put out by the Conservative Heritage Foundation.
Look, I think the data speaks for itself. There is a clear overlap between what Donald Trump is doing so far and what Project 2025 has proposed.
During the campaign, Trump repeatedly denied any links to the project.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it.
And yet, of the 53 executive actions in his first week in office, CNN's analysis found more than 2/3 align with the project's proposals. At least 140 Trump administration officials and dozens of allies helped craft that document, including his new CIA director, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and Tom Homan, the border czar.
We're going to go where we got to go, whether it's a school, a church, or a hospital.
More specifics. When the South American country of Colombia initially refused to accept military planes loaded with deportees, Trump quickly and aggressively threatened to impose a punishing tariff, right on script with what Project 2025 proposed.
As you know, in Colombia, they agreed with us almost immediately after I got involved.
Trump immediately revoked the security clearance of top government officials suspected of not supporting his goals. And he's talked up more oil drilling in the far north, where the Project 2025 plan says Alaska is a special case and deserves immediate action. For all that, a Trump spokesman still insists the new president had nothing to do with Project 2025, and he's just securing the border, restoring common sense, driving down inflation, and unleashing American energy.
Dr. Canervo, President Trump has repeatedly stated that he has nothing to do with Project 2025. Do you believe the overlap between those documents and his current policies are a mere coincidence?
No, not really. It seems to me that, like a lot of other things, he was not, as former Tennessee Senator Bob Corker said, that President Trump is not always completely honest and has problems with the truth. And I think that that's the case here with 2025 as well. Certainly, as we look at the effect of the executive orders that he's signed so far, with the dismissal of people in USAID, putting holds on expenditures, putting other people's jobs at risk, certainly that was one of the things which the 2025 document had proposed, and that is cleaning out the federal government and replacing as many people as possible with loyalists to President Trump. And certainly in the first 3 weeks, it appears that that is what he's doing.
Yeah, I can totally see why people are making that connection. I guess what I wonder is, why would our president lie about something like that?
Well, of course, that seems to be something that Trump had problems with all through the campaign. One of the things about 2025 was that it was controversial. There were things that certainly a number of people did not like that are in it, and he wanted to get away from having that identified with him. And so he at least bent the truth some by saying that he wasn't going to follow it or didn't know anything about it. And so what we're facing then is a situation where people who had jobs in the federal government, civil service jobs, and civil service protection is supposed to exist, meaning that these are people who cannot be fired, supposedly, without cause. And what we're seeing is that people are being removed from their positions without any kind of cause. There's no charge that these people have done anything wrong, though Trump has occasionally used the term criminal behavior and other such things as to suggest that there's been wrongdoing, when in fact there's no evidence to that at all on the part of these workers. So that's a real problem, and upsetting, needless to say, to the workers themselves.
Yeah.
One of the things which has happened, of course, is that a judge has stepped in and tried to halt some of the buyouts which are occurring. And Vice President J.D. Vance spoke up and said, well, judges have no business getting involved in trying to regulate and stop what the president is legally, quote unquote, legally doing. And
well, that's exactly why we have checks and balances.
Well,
though.
exactly. We have 3 co-equal branches of government, and checks and balances are built in by the Constitution, and this is just simply one of those checks which needs to be paid attention to. The problem is, however, that as had been said early in history under Jackson's presidential term, the Supreme Court has made its decision, so let them enforce it. And of course, the federal courts have no enforcement ability. They rely on the executive branch to do that.
I see what you mean. So I guess, I'm curious. You mentioned, part of Project 2025 was, Trump hypothetically replacing government officials with people that are specifically loyal to him, not just our U.S. government. Do you believe he's been taking those steps so far?
Well, it appears that he has made some steps in that direction, and with some success. No one except a judge or two have stood in his way in trying to stop this. And so the danger is that people who are experienced, who have knowledge about the departments in which they work, are going to be dismissed and be replaced with people who don't have that historical background knowledge to work with, who don't perhaps at least now understand the departments and what they're supposed to be doing, are going to be replaced with those people, and they're going to be completely loyal to Trump and just do whatever he says to do.
Exactly. It's less about maybe qualifications and more about their commitment and dedication to him. And, You know, it's so interesting because some of these policies that he's been pushing for so strongly so early have already been receiving widespread backlash from Americans. And I'm wondering, do you think under this term, under this presidency, that our countries can become more unified or even more divided?
Well, I think certainly at the moment we're probably going to be more divided as policies are changing very quickly without really any discussion. If we were to take DEI, for example, the diversity, equity, inclusion position, there are even some major companies like Meta that are turning their backs on DEI, but they had been supporters of it. And so that's going to be a problem.
Understandable. And we'll get more into some of his policies here in a moment. We'll be right back after this short break to discuss some of the effects of tariffs.
Wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you as you bring our colorful stories to the world.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
This past January. And China has decided to hit back on President Trump's tariffs, and the back and forth between the world's two largest economies could put American consumers in the middle. Karen Kaifa is in Washington with what consumers need to know today.
There is a lot to sort through here and a lot to keep track of because the true impact of these tariffs won't truly be felt until retailers and businesses need to fill their warehouses again.
The day after Mexico and Canada negotiated respective 30-day pauses on President Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on their goods coming into the U.S.,
we've found a good, I think, accommodation here, and we're going to be showing progress over the next 30 days.
Trump's 10% tariff on all goods coming to the U.S. from China took effect after midnight on Tuesday, and Beijing pushed back with tariffs on some U.S. energy and metals imports. The moves elevating trade tensions between the world's two largest economies. And eventually, the American consumer could get caught in the middle.
I think it's a lose-lose. It's just a question of how big the loss. It raises prices, it raises inflation, and of course, we've been through a very wrenching period globally with high inflation. It's been a real problem.
Among items that could see higher prices, consumer electronics like phones, TVs, and computers, toys, jewelry, silverware, and sporting equipment, and shoes and sneakers imported in large numbers from China. The real impact will be felt once businesses deplete their current warehouse stock and need to bring in more, unless the U.S. and China strike a deal soon. Democrats note that tariffs don't align with the economic relief Trump promised in his 2024 campaign.
Tariffs will undoubtedly drive up costs. You shared some of those numbers earlier, and people are living paycheck to paycheck. This is the opposite of what Trump ran on and what the American people want.
During his campaign, President Trump promised lower prices and inflation for American consumers. Dr. Canervo, do you believe any of his bills and proposals have aligned with that mission so far?
I think it's too early for prices to have come down based on Trump's actions. But certainly if you look at the actions he has taken on tariffs, imposing tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China, and just yesterday imposing 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into this country, most of which comes from Canada and Mexico, then what we're going to be finding down the road in the next few weeks and months is potentially higher prices for products made with steel and aluminum, as well as all the other products coming in from Mexico and Canada. Tariffs are charges, they're taxes that are levied against products coming into this country. They are paid by the importers, and the importers then add that to the wholesale price that they charge the people who, like Walmart and other stores, that they have to pay for those products to put on their shelves. And so most economists are arguing that in fact it's going to lead to higher prices for a lot of those products. Now, Trump has argued that the key to getting prices down is to get energy costs down. That's why the drill, baby, drill.
Yes.
So that we can have a surplus of energy and those prices will drop. I don't think, though, from what most economists seem to be saying, that that alone is going to solve the problem. And certainly the stock market doesn't believe that. They've had some problems as well in recent days with the tariffs, because they believe the tariffs are going to increase the prices and continue inflation.
Of course. I mean, even with the energy argument that Trump might be making, it is undeniable that the nature of tariffs is going to pass that higher expense on to the consumer. You know, we as Americans, we're footing that bill while we wait to see if these new energy expeditions pay off, or whatever it is that we think might bring in more income and help with the higher prices.
Yeah, and so those tariffs are going to lead to reciprocal tariffs on the part of countries who have to pay them. So our products will cost more in those countries, and that could lead to job losses in this country as American producers find it more difficult to sell their products overseas, just as foreign companies will find it more difficult to sell their products here.
Exactly.
And so unless we can somehow build up our own production capabilities in certain areas like steel, which we don't have right now, U.S. Steel Company, which is our largest, for example, is still using very old technology apparently, and so cannot produce as much steel as we need at a cheap enough competitive price.
Yes.
And so that's going to be a real problem for American consumers.
Definitely. I think that combined with, you know, the movement of shipping out illegal immigrants, right, or immigrants that don't have proper status here, you know, that does lessen our workforce, and that is going to have an impact as well. I think those two things combined might make things very difficult in terms of being able to afford the same quality of living we Americans might be used to.
Well, you're right. It seems to me that, of course, we use migrant labor a good bit in agriculture. Mm-hmm. They do jobs which Americans generally don't want to do, and at a fairly low price in wages. And it's also true in some other areas as well, besides agriculture, such as housing construction, meat processing, those sorts of areas. And so with a shortage of workers in those areas, it's going to mean higher prices because of either a shortage in those commodities or having to pay workers more in order to get them to help produce the product.
Exactly.
And so we're talking higher prices all around.
Exactly. And I mean, I find myself wondering, could any of this be beneficial for the American people?
Well, it could be if there are Americans who are willing to do some of those jobs at a higher wage.
Okay.
And so if that's something which appeals to people, those who are unemployed, then yes, it can be beneficial to them. But the past history seems to suggest that that's not going to happen probably.
Yeah,
At least to the extent that we need it.
Exactly. It is, our labor industry in terms of produce, agriculture, steel. You're right. It is a very intensive position, and we would not want to be short on manpower during this time while prices are rising. And we'll continue to talk more about some of these policies after we come back from the short break to discuss the future of USAID. So stay tuned.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Thanks for sticking around. To close out our segment today, we'll be talking about the U.S. Agency for International Development. A federal judge on Friday temporarily blocked an order by the Trump administration to place 2,000 USAID workers on leave. With the next steps remaining in limbo, Laura Aguirre shows us what is at stake.
Humanitarian assistance will stop, food aid will stop being distributed, medication to fight HIV will stop.
A workforce of about 10,000 could drop to around 300, leaving a void that some warn U.S. adversaries could fill.
Allowing others such as China, Russia, Iran, North Korea to fill this vacuum, it's had a devastating effect.
Meanwhile, a federal judge paused the Trump administration's Thursday deadline on a deferred resignation offer to the federal workforce, promising full pay and benefits through September. A White House official says at least 65,000 workers have taken the deal so far.
There are no guarantees in this proposal. There is no congressional appropriation to fund it.
Members of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have accessed critical systems across the federal government, including the Treasury. Insight into their clearances and tasks conflicting.
There is no tinkering with the system. They are on read-only. They are looking. They can make no changes.
He was given unfettered access to not only look at that information, but also do something about it, such as stop payments.
I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
So Dr. Canervo, can you explain for us what USAID does?
Well, USAID has been under fire for 3 weeks now, since Trump took office. And there have been charges that the people who are involved in USAID are corrupt, that they are running scams, and there's just no evidence that that's the case. Mm-hmm. What in fact has happened is that these are people who over the years have been providing relief to other countries, much poorer countries. The United States is the richest country in the world, and we see it as an obligation to the rest of the world to provide some help, humanitarian help, in terms of food and medicines particularly, and perhaps some help with housing. Mm-hmm. But food and medicine are the big things. And without that help from us, these other countries are going to suffer. The USAID budget is about 1% of our total national budget. Very small percentage, only 1%. And to say that we shouldn't provide humanitarian help really makes us look bad as a country. The Trump voters should have known this was going to happen because of Trump's America First policies that he talked about over and over again during the campaign. So to me, it's a matter of believing perhaps that the Trump voters really don't want to help other people. They certainly don't want the American government helping other people who are starving. In South Sudan, for example, or in Africa, where medicines are needed terribly for things like polio, aids. And so it's eliminating that kind of help, which is heartbreaking to me, because I believe we ought to be doing good humanitarian things to help other people survive. But a second point is that this is a way in which the United States, which is known for its military spending and its armaments and shipping arms and weapons all over the world, this is a way in which we can put a nicer face on the country. That we are sending things that are helping people, helping the common person, and at the same time providing an image for this country other than one of being an arms dealer.
I totally hear what you're saying. You know, hearing that USAID is only responsible for 1% of government spending, and yet is being targeted in the way that it has these past few weeks, is quite shocking to me, especially it being a way to get aid out there to people who are suffering and who really need those resources, the food, the medicine, right? You know, I think if it's only, especially if it's only 1% of our budget, why not? You know, I feel like we spend so much money on so many other things. We're in a great deal of debt.
Yeah.
And, you know, if my taxpayer dollars are going towards helping those less fortunate, I have absolutely no problem with that.
Sure, and I think a lot of people feel that way. If USAID is in fact guilty of scams and corruption, then let's prosecute those people.
Exactly.
Let's show that that in fact is the case. But if there's no prosecution undertaken, then it seems to me that it's again all rhetoric with no real factual substance behind it.
Yes.
And that's a shame. If we really want to cut the budget, let's go after Social Security. Let's go after health care. Let's go after some of the big entitlement items that make up the majority of the budget.
Yes.
And well, I hate to mention that, but if he really wants to cut the budget, that's where the budget is.
That is very true. A lot of our spending goes towards those things. So I totally see what you mean. That compared to a small amount of spending that we dedicate to humanitarian aid.
Right. Of course, what I prefer to see is more tax money coming in from the very wealthy.
I agree. That would be another way to increase our revenue as a country.
It seems to me that's the way to help everybody, including Americans.
Do you think that's likely, though?
No. I think the tax cuts that are going to be, renewed are going to, as they say, help the wealthy at some expense of the poor, or the middle class and poor.
Yes, sir, which is very unfortunate.
Yes. It's the Elon Musks, the Bezos, those folks who will be getting the tax benefits.
Exactly, the people front row at the presidential inauguration.
That's right.
Who would have thought?
Which is why they were there. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, an important part of our government, like USAID, might be very much so limited or completely eliminated. And a judge, as we know, has temporarily blocked that. So we'll have to see how this keeps playing out. And hopefully they're still going to be able to send funds to those who really need it. Well, unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in for another edition of Inside the System. We hope you guys have a great week and a happy Valentine's Day. See you next time.